Lo Sihiye Mishakeila. Still a new Maamar that we're learning about this verse from Parshas Mishpatim. Lo Sihiye Mishakeila v'kar b'atzecha es mispayir mecha male. There'll be no bereaved or no one who has miscarriage, no one who has to bury their young, God forbid, or barren women in your land. I will fill the number of your days. And then this verse follows the verse of V'avatem es Havaya Elokechem. You should serve Havaya your Elokim, Havaya Elokechem. V'erechas lachmecha v'esmemecha v'esiresi machla b'kirbecha. And you'll bless your bread and your water, and I'll remove all sickness, illness from your midst. On a basic level, we're seeing that there's three brachas that are being mentioned here, and they're being mentioned not just that you should have the bracha for it, but it should be coming in abundance. That God will bless your bread and your water, and that's the bracha for parnasa, for sustenance, livelihood, and not just to have enough, but to have an abundance, to have extra, a muchness of it. Then I'm going to remove illness from your midst, and I'm going to fill the number of your days. It's a bracha for life and health, and not just to not have illness, but to also have longevity, because someone could have a short, healthy life, but we want to have good health and long life. Amen. And then Lo Sihiye Mishakeila v'kar, that's going to be the bracha for children, not just to be able to have children, but that they should survive, they should thrive, and also have long, beautiful lives. Amen. What we started seeing is that this phrasing of Lo Sihiye Mishakeila could be understood in two different ways. One is a command, it says, oh, there should not be any in your midst. Don't have those. Or it could be a promise. There will not be any of these within your midst. Not a bereaved or barren or etc. Which one is it? Well, it's kind of both. You're commanded to do as much as you can, as in looking at the previous verse. When you serve God, you have to do your part, and then God fills it in, the blessing fills in the rest of it. Takes over from there. The question that we asked is that it seems to be saying that our service, that when you serve God, all these blessings will come true for you. And yet we've seen that these sort of blessings are actually not necessarily dependent on what we do, but it's decided by our mazel. When we say mazel, whether you mean constellation or the angels, the spiritual sources, it seems to mean that this is already built in to your life story. So what is the impact going to be? Well, your impact is going to be how much of it you're going to get. We saw the stories of the Gemara that there are very great sages, Rav Chisda and Rabba, that even though both could pray in a drought for rain to fall, they had very different lives. So you can't say, oh, it's your divine service, because your divine service is exemplary. And yet their physical lives are very different. It seems to be proof about the fact that this stuff has already been decided. And then we saw also that the angel, before a person is born, the angel goes and says to God, what's going to be with this drop? And the only thing that's not decided, smart or stupid or wealthy or poor, and the only thing that's not decided is fear of heaven, because that's where your actual choice is. People think, oh, the only thing we ask of you is fear of heaven. Okay, but when you really think about it, your moral choices happen more frequently than you think. Throughout the day, there's so many times, and not just if you're relaying information to someone and you decide to withhold some information, lying by omission, or if you exaggerate a little bit. You could have situations like that. Even if you decide to get upset about something, because as we've learned, that getting upset about something is not agreeing to the fact that God is running the world, or frustrated, or any of these sort of things, any of these negative emotions, or times of sadness or doubt that's not proportionate to what's going on. This is not a moment of tshuva, so what are you depressed about in this moment? Just randomly, whether you realize it or not, some measure of a moral decision is being made here about whether or not you're trying to combat it, or whether or not you're letting it happen, or whether or not you're inviting it in, any of that sort of stuff. So it actually happens much more frequently. So everything else leave to God, and we got enough problems to deal with, just our own states of being. Okay, the abundance aspect of it, that's the part that you could influence. This is just a basic thing that's being covered. The Maamar is not going to address anymore necessarily the physical aspect of what you can or can't do, or how you know what's decided for you, that kind of stuff. Instead, the Maamar is shifting gears now to discuss what does it mean that we're serving God. Why does the Torah use the wording of V'avatem es Havaya Elokechem? Term of service seems to only apply for the physical realm. The physical realm is where you have a master, where he lacks something, and he has a servant to fill that need. Through that whole relationship there, everybody's so happy, because the master, his need is being filled, and the servant is being so useful, fulfilling the need, so you feel fulfilled, and everyone's fulfilled in this moment, and mazel tov. Yes, we understand this relationship, but where does God come into this kind of relationship? God doesn't need anything. He's not lacking for anything. By definition, by the fact that he's God means that he automatically isn't. Because he's God, it means he's perfect. So he does not lack of anything. He doesn't need anything. But you must serve him. Why? What for? He doesn't need it. This is what the focus of the Maamar is going to be about. What are we doing and how much gets affected by what we're doing? And what is this whole relationship that we have? What's going on here? Again, we're shifting away from the physical aspect of the blessings and we're focusing more on this. Now, I added, and we didn't see this last time, but it's 2 points. Because remember I said that there's 2 different translations, so also some of their footnotes are different. The stuff that they reference, oh, look here for more. So now that I caught up on both of them, we're going to see a little bit more about this, but the word of avoda in Hebrew means work. By the way, I saw this from a different Maamar where it talks about the word malacha, we translate as work. The word malach is related to that word. They have the same letters. Mem, lamed, aleph, chaf. Because the malach, the angel, is doing Hashem's work. Well, we see that. Though you have your spiritual channeling, here it's a constellation. If you go up higher, you get an angel. And you go up higher, you get one of the attributes. Anyway, the word of avoda is a term of work, but also of service, vavatim, to serve, related to the terminology of art avudin, tanning hides, to tan a hide. We've mentioned this before. When we speak about divine service, we use the word of avoda, or avaida, relating it to this word of tanning a hide, because you're taking something that's coarse and unusable, and you're through a lot of work, are turning it into something that's much more refined and usable. So you're taking a hide and you're going to turn it into a parchment that you can now use for a Torah, etc. So the point of divine service is not just like, oh, check mark, got it done, but it's actually work on yourself, and that will refine you. This is from Tanya Gerta Kodesh, as part of a later section of Tanya. The term service, we say for avoda, however, applies only to what a man does with immense exertion. With immense exertion contrary to his soul's inclination. But he overrules his nature and will out of deference to the supreme will. So since the soul is not naturally inclined to such a situation, a great deal of toil and effort is required. Let's go back to the idea. You're supposed to serve God. And we're looking from a Chassidic point of view, when we say serve God, that it's something you got to be working at. You're not necessarily inclined toward these sort of behaviors. And by these sort of behaviors, you're not necessarily inclined to certain mitzvot. There's certain things like that. And when we say that you got to serve, we mean that you really got to work on yourself, and you really got to get yourself to the point where you're going to be doing whatever has to be done, despite whatever natural state you have. This is from Hayom Yom, compiled by the Rebbe. Vavdeu, we're getting the word of service here again. Know the God of your fathers and serve him with a whole heart. Every sort of Torah knowledge and comprehension, even the most profound, must be expressed in avoda. So it's not just enough to be learning stuff, it's got to translate. That's when we spend so much focus on. The mind has to control, channel, create emotion in the heart. It's not enough to just intellectualize and theorize about stuff. You got to bring it down to the heart level. What I mean by the heart level, because the same way the heart's going to pump blood to the rest of the body, when you believe in something so much, you're going to elicit an emotion, and that emotion is going to take over. That emotion is going to pump to the rest of your body, so now it's going to lead to an action. Say the prophet, that person standing in the river going, oh my God, I'm so thirsty. It's like a person saying, I love God so much, what am I supposed to do about it? What do you mean, what do you do about it? God has a whole list of stuff that you can do about your love for him. Expressed in avoda, i.e. the intellectual attainment must bring about an actual refinement and improvement of character trait, and must be translated to deep-rooted inward attachment to God, all of which is what Chassidus calls avoda. So this we're seeing, when we're talking about service of God and this word of avoda, you got to really refine yourself. Everything that you're doing is supposed to very much impact you and come out as something. Returning to this idea that we say that God is perfect, he's complete, he's not lacking for everything, he's complete of everything, so how do we serve him? All this work that we're putting into ourselves and all the work that we're putting into fulfilling God's will, what does it do for anybody? In answer to your question, we have two answers that contradict each other. There's conflicting teachings on this. There's one level that says that your service makes a difference, and there's another that yes, your service does make a difference. So which one is it? Well, it's both, isn't it? The conflicting teachings, one, we have service makes a difference. This is from Bereshis Rabbah. I'm not sure if we saw this text exactly, but we saw a similar text. I think we saw this one, per Maamar, when it talks about what does God care about how you slaughter an animal? Why does God care about the details of the Torah? After these matters, the word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, fear not Avram, I'm a shield for you, your reward is very great. So that's the pasuk that's being quoted. After these matters, the word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, the Almighty's way is faultless. The word of Hashem is refined. Trufa, he is a shield for all who take refuge in him. If his ways are faultless, all the more so that he himself is. So if everything God does is without fault, then he definitely is without fault. Rav said the mitzvahs were given only to refine, letzarif. So it's taking the word of trufa, and it's giving us basically the infinitive tense of it. Letzarif, people through them, to refine people through them. The word of Hashem is refined, and he gave us the mitzvahs to refine us. After our why should the whole and blessed be care whether one slaughters an animal from the throat or slaughters it from the nape? As in, why should God care? All these laws of shechting, what does God care? Just say, like, be nice to the animal, if that's what's important. Instead, we have all these details about how it has to be done. Thus, we learn that the mitzvahs were given only to refine the creations with them. To say that all the mitzvahs that we do, it's not about him, it's about us. It's about the process, the way that we are processed through doing the mitzvahs. And that is our refinement. We also have this pasuk from Iyov. We actually just saw this, I think, also in the last Maamar. If you sin, what do you do to him? And if your transgressions are many, what do you do to him? If you're righteous, what do you give him? Or what does he take from your hand? Say, for me, if you sin, what does it make a difference to him? God is so far removed. Everything is so nothing before God. So your actions, basically, what do they matter? If you do wrong, what does it matter? If you do right, what does it matter? It seems to say that our actions, the whole idea of service is not for God, it's for us. If man's service would make any difference to Hashem, he wouldn't be Hashem. As in, we are not contributing to you. How can you contribute to God who is perfect? Otherwise, he's not perfect. He's not God. But if what we're doing is not contributing to God, so why then are there mitzvahs? Why do we even bother with these mitzvahs? Why do we have them if it's not doing anything for God? Seemingly. According to these texts, it's a kindness to us to learn how to refine ourselves and engage with this world. Because we are coarse, physical entities, all the mitzvahs and all the details of the mitzvahs are to make us more refined in the world. It teaches us how to behave and function within the world, to be our best selves, and then also how to engage in the best way with the world around us and to refine the world around us. According to this opinion, your service actually doesn't make a difference. It's actually for you. The second opinion is your service does make a difference. And when we say make a difference, it means it makes a difference to him. And this is from Parsha Shlach. Now please let the strength of the Lord be increased as you spoke, saying. So we're looking at let the strength of the Lord be increased. This is from the Gemara of Shabbat. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, when Moshe ascended on high, he found the Holo and blessed be he tying crowns to letters. Remember we saw this and it was about how we saw him tying the crowns and he says, why are you not giving the Torah? What's delaying you? And he says, I'm putting on these crowns because there's going to be Akiva ben Yosef is going to offer bounds and bounds of explanations. That's also the prayer of Maamar. Maamar. So Moshe said, so why don't you just give the Torah through him? Why are you giving the Torah through me? And then he went and he put him in the back of his study hall. And Rabbi Akiva explained, gave his exposition. First Moshe saw it and became weakened, and then, wow, what brilliant. And then Rabbi Akiva said everything comes from Moshe at Har Sinai, so Moshe was encouraged by that, strengthened by that. And then Moshe said, what's the reward for such a great sage? And God showed him, and he was like, really? This is his reward? That he was martyred? And God said, silence, this is my will. Okay, anyways, happier notes. So on top of certain letters, there are ornamental crownlets. If you've ever seen the text of the Torah, when it talks about the crowns, it's talking about those lines that are coming up from the tops of some of the letters. So Rabbi Akiva had exposition on those lines, on those crowns. Mounds and mounds of exegesis. Can you imagine? Moshe comes up on high and he sees that God is tying these crowns to the letters. Moshe basically is just watching Hashem work. Moshe said nothing. And Hashem said to him, Moshe, is there no greeting in your city? As in, do people not greet each other in your city? Why didn't you say hello? He said before him, does a servant greet his master? That would be disrespectful. It's not for me to speak first. He said to him, as in Hashem said to Moshe, at least you should have assisted me and wished me success in my work. Immediately he said to him, and now may the power of the Lord be great as you have spoken. That's the verse that we just saw. Vata yigdal nakoch Hashem. Hashem is telling Moshe, wish me success in my work, as if what Moshe is going to say is going to have an impact. It's going to make a difference. Wish me luck. Why? God needs luck. What's going on here? So a little bit like that. And then Moshe uses this verse that the power should be increased. Seems to say that we do have an impact, some sort of effect. This is from Eicha. Eicha is the book of Lamentations that we read on Tisha B'Av. And gone is from the daughter of Zion all her splendor. Her princes were like harts who did not find pasture, and they departed without strength before their pursuer. We're actually looking at this part of they departed without strength before their pursuer. One more pasuk. This is from Parshas Hazinu, toward the end of the book of Devarim. You forgot the mighty rock who bore you. You forgot the God who delivered you. And here it's saying the word of teshi. That third word there, forgot, means that you weakened. You weakened the rock who bore you. Eicha Rabbah, Medrash Rabbah on Eicha. It says on the verse of they went powerless before their pursuer. This is what we just saw. From Eicha. Rabbi Azariah said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Simon, when Israel performs the will of the omnipresent, they add strength to the power on high, just as it says, with Elokim will triumph. Elokim nasa chayil. When Israel does not perform the will of the omnipresent, they, as it were, exhaust the great power on high. As it is written, you abandon the rock that begot you. So that's the Tzorilat Chateshi. Other verse that we saw from Hazinu. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Simon said in the name of Rabbi Levi ben Rabbi Tarfon, when Israel performs the will of the Holy One, they add strength to the power on high, just as it says, now please let the power of the Lord be great. When Israel does not perform the will of the Holy One, blessed be He, they, as it were, exhaust the great power on high, and they too go powerless before the pursuer. Looking at these verses, it seems to say that what we do does make a difference. That God's power per se is impacted by our actions. When we remember Him, it adds strength to Him. If we don't, God forbid, remember Him, then it takes away some of the strength of Him. You can't see it here, but in the original text from the Torah, there's letters of each of these words. In Yigdal, the verse of Yigdal na koch Hashem, and in the verse of Tzorilat Chateshi, the Yuds there are different sizes. Throughout Tanakh, throughout the 24 books of the Torah, basically, each letter of the alphabet appears once oversized and once in miniature. There's one parsha very famously that has a small aleph. Parshas Vayikra. So throughout Tanakh, each letter of the alphabet appears once oversized and once in miniature. In the text, you'll see a larger sized letter and you see a small sized letter. Like you see in Shema, the ayin there is larger, the dal is larger. If you see it in the Torah, these letters, ayin and dal, spells aid. But if you see them, these letters are larger. In the above verses, Yigdal, as in let the strength of the Lord be increased. In the above verses, Yigdal, the Yud is oversized, and in Teshi, it's miniature. Teshi is in you forgot, you weakened. So the Yud represents the 10th sphere, the 10 attributes. The oversized Yud is a plea that the sphere be revealed in abundant measure, not weakened through deficiencies in service. So the fact that we're saying, let the strength of God be increased, the fact that it has a larger Yud there, it's saying this is a prayer, that it should be increased, versus the smaller Yud, it should not be decreased. All to say that it seems that our service does make an impact on God. So the first thing we have, does our service make a difference? Well, no, because everything is really just about refining ourselves. And the other thing, actually, if you see all the different elements here, our service does make a difference. Which one is it? So now that brings us up to the end of the paragraph, the next paragraph of the Maamar. So this now is the text of the Maamar. We have to understand what is the inyan, what is the matter of avoda. What does it mean? Remember, this is what we started with. What does it mean, divine service? This word of avoda, what is that supposed to mean? Shalza Nemar, that on it says, that you should serve Havaya Elokechem. Focusing on the word of avoda here. Dilchara, that it seems to be, that the whole idea, the entire idea of service of a servant to his master is shaykh rak be'eved v'adon lamata. That it only seems to be connected, it only seems to apply for a servant and his master down here. That the servant is able to add, lo sif, like the word of Yosef, shleimas, completeness, like shlema, refuah shlema, you should have a complete refuah. Etzel adono, to his master, in relation to his master, de'im hayoso adon, vadanamiti, that even if he is a master, he's a true master, as in someone who's even a master of their own selves. So they're not just someone who's a master in the sense of I have servants, but someone who actually, I guess they put together is a very broad way of saying it. Mem mikol makom, nevertheless, That there are matters that are lacking, chaser, that are lacking to him. So even if someone sees you're truly a master of your own self, I am the master of my fate. Even if you see someone like that, something has to be lacking, or else why do you have a servant? This is what service of a servant is. To fill what's lacking or to complete a will, something that he wants. That through this he's going to complete the master. Mashlim is like shleimus, lahashlim, those are all the same words. And from this is understood that also through this is added completeness also to the servant who is serving. A very clunky way of translating it. This is what we started off with. How can you say that God needs our service if God is God? And it seems like this whole idea of saying, we are servant to master, that would only apply down here in this physical realm, where it makes sense that someone, a master, even if someone who's quote unquote broad sense of saying totally put together, master of a fate kind of person, he lacks something, so he hires someone. Takes on a servant to fill that lacking. The servant will fulfill the lack of the master, and then through that, the servant also feels fulfilled because he's doing the will of the master. How does this apply when it comes to God, who doesn't lack anything, or else he's not God? That's the first line of what we're leading to.